Hi everyone, my name is Ursula Kint and I'm doing my cultural perspective on Muslims. So there's a couple of beliefs that you might need to know in order to understand Muslims' process of death and not just kind of understanding their religion basically. So just to be clear, Islam is the religion and Muslims are the people that follow it. And then Islam translates to the achievement of peace with Allah, which is their God and man, and complete resignation to Allah in thoughts, words, beliefs, and deeds. So it's basically saying you must dedicate your life to God. And then the Quran is their sacred book. Something to compare it to would be in the Christian religion, the Bible. It's fairly similar to that. So it says a few things that are important to know within the Quran. One that I kind of already mentioned is that there's only one God, and that is Allah, and that they have a day of judgment, and they believe in afterlife. And then there are several prophets, Jesus, Abraham, and Moses are a few of them. And then the highest prophet's name is Muhammad, and he's believed to kind of written the Quran, and God kind of gave him what to write basically. And then there are 5 pillars of Islam, and this is fairly comparable to the Ten Commandments in the Christian religion. And there is declaring faith, which means just declaring yourself to Allah and that there's only one God. And then they have to pray 5 times a day and give money to a charity and fast, which just means like giving up food for a certain amount of time. And then they're supposed to take 1 pilgrimage to Mecca, which is their holy city. So Mecca is also kind of important later on, not just during life but also during death, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So Muslims view death as a transition from one state of being to another, and not really as an end, because they believe in the afterlife, and they believe that the actions that you do during your life follow you to your afterlife. So if you follow the different laws and pillars of the Quran and you live a good life, you'll be rewarded in the afterlife. But if you lived a bad life or were not following the Quran very well, then you will be separated from the goodness of the world, and your afterlife will not be pleasant. And then that's also kind of why they pray 5 times a day, because it pleases Allah, and they are to be prepared for death at any time. So if they went like 2 weeks without praying or something, then that would not please Allah, and at the time of death, the family that are mourning the person will probably pray a bit more, just so that that person can have a fairly pleasant afterlife. And then they believe that the body should be buried very soon after, so typically it'll be about 24 to 48 hours. They don't believe in cremation or open caskets or anything like that. And you may see that at other funerals. Open caskets are fairly common with Christians, or just really kind of the general population of the US. And then for the preparation before the funeral, there are two rituals, and the first one is ghusl, and the second one is coffin. I looked those pronunciations up, so hopefully I have that right. And in the ghusl, close family members of the same sex as the person that died will wash that person who has passed away, and they typically will wash them 3 times, because an odd number is kind of sacred and known throughout the Quran. And then the coffin involves the covering and wrapping of the person with large, simple sheets, one on top of the other. So the material and the color of the sheets may vary by region or country, but typically a man is wrapped in 3 sheets and a woman is wrapped in 5, and that's kind of going back to how 3 is kind of a sacred number, or odd numbers specifically are a sacred number. And then they'll typically put planks of wood kind of in the ground on the burial site, and place the body in that later so they don't do a coffin or anything like that. And then for a Muslim burial, the grave should be perpendicular to Mecca, which is, as I mentioned before, the Islamic holy city, and that person is placed on the right side facing Mecca. And an Islamic leader who is called the Imam will typically speak at the funeral, and there will be several prayers that are said, and then some readings from the Quran as well. And it's important that during those prayers, everyone, including the deceased, are facing Mecca. And then at the end, each person at the burial site will throw a handful or sometimes 3 handfuls of soil after the body is covered with wood. And then prayers and readings are sometimes said while that happens. Typically, a prayer is said. And then after the body is buried, the guests will go back to the family's house of the deceased, and typically a meal is prepared for people to enjoy, and they'll typically stay the whole day, and family members may stay for as long as a week. And during this time, the family members can socialize, and that's believed to help the suffering, because if you're socializing, you're not thinking too much or grieving too much about the deceased, which is kind of true for a lot of cultures, I think. So I thought that was interesting that was mentioned in several sources that I found. And then the mourners aren't supposed to show much visible grief. They are allowed to cry, but crying out or screaming is shown as disrespectful to Allah. And in Islamic culture, death is accepted and viewed as a natural part of life. So they believe that if someone does cry out, then the deceased may suffer in afterlife. And then typically the mourners are given about 40 days to mourn, and they will wear black the entire 40 days. And widows are given a little bit longer. They're given 4 months and 10 days, and they will actually wear black for an entire year. And that's kind of supposed to say, like, I'm a widow. They can't get attention from other men during that time because it's disrespectful. And then Muslims don't believe in any kind of like grief counseling or therapy or anything like that, at least from what I saw in kind of the more traditional Islamic views. And then it was kind of similar to what I was saying before, in that it would be disrespectful to Allah, since getting help is similar to not accepting or appreciating His choice to take the deceased when it was Allah's choice to take them.